character to restore our reputation for the next 2 years because of that controversy. However, in the future, beyond the next general election, as far as I'm concerned, the question is entirely open.
Well, the opposition are calling for a general election, and they believe some Tory MPs might be willing to help them achieve it. Well, earlier I spoke to Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves.
We're looking at all different opportunities, but in the end, as you suggested earlier, Anna, we would have to work with Conservative MPs to be able to do that, because despite everything, they do have a majority in the House of Commons. But I know that there are a lot of Conservative MPs who share the worries of their constituents that another Conservative Prime Minister and Chancellor aren't going to be able to sort out this mess. The government has no mandate from the British people for what they're doing at the moment.
Well, our political correspondent Rob Powell is here with me in Downing Street this morning. And Rob, it's been a dizzying few days politically, hasn't it? And we find ourselves in this extraordinary position where once again we're talking about a Tory leadership race.
Yeah, it was this time last week we were all glued to that flight tracker website tracking Kwasi Kwarteng, who was still Chancellor at that point, on the way back from Washington, to be sacked in there by Liz Truss. And remember, before he'd left Washington, he'd given an interview saying that yes, absolutely, he'd still be Chancellor and the Prime Minister would still be at number 10 in a month's time, 1 week on, and they are both out. Where we are this morning essentially is waiting, if you like, for some of the front runners in this leadership contest that will take the next week to come forward. And the crucial difference between this leadership contest and the one we had, that very lengthy one over the summer, is that threshold of 100 supporters that's needed to get through to the ballot rounds. That means that a lot of the candidates that came forward in the summer and then quickly were booted out won't be there, and you're probably left, if we're being honest, with maybe the 3 bigger candidates. Front runner at the moment, I think, is Rishi Sunak. The updated number of publicly declared supporters for him now is 34. He hasn't declared yet, but those around him say if he does, which I think we can probably bet he will, his pitch will be about economic credibility and saying that he's someone who will bring people together from various wings of the party. Debatable, I think, whether he can really bring the party together. Still a lot of bad blood towards him over sort of perceived disloyalty in the past to Boris Johnson, if you like. Penny Mordaunt's also there, she's got 16 supporters in there, and then also, of course, potentially come back for Boris Johnson.
Yes, I mean, is that a serious possibility that Boris Johnson could come back, could win, could be back in number 10?
So 37 MPs by our count are publicly supporting Boris Johnson and saying they want. One of his close friends this morning said that he thinks it's likely that he will run. At the moment, he's on holiday in the Caribbean. The reports are, and when you spoke to Will Walden, his former press secretary, he'd heard that he was heading back from there. Now, the pitch that's made from supporters is that he won the 2019 election, he's got the mandate, he can bring the party together. I think it's very, very difficult to see how that plays out in practice, though. It was only July that 60-odd ministers resigned from his government, saying that they didn't believe that he could govern or he could lead anymore. You look at the polls, and there is a new poll that's come out this morning overall showing that Labour still maintain like a 39-point lead over the Conservatives. But Boris Johnson's personal poll ratings as well are not what they were. He may be very popular in parts of the Conservative Party, among members, among MPs, but he's deeply unpopular in parts of the country as well. And he also comes in without the sort of Brexit hobby horse to campaign off the back of, if you like. He comes in at a very, very difficult point if he wants to win this. So the whole context is completely different from 2019, which I think raises a question of whether he'd want to, and secondly, whether enough MPs will realistically back him to get him to that 100 MP mark. I think the broader, bigger question is actually, with such deep divisions in the party, can anyone really come in and unify this party at the moment? That's why opposition parties say no, and that's why they say there needs to be a general election.
Okay, Rob, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. Well, there's more bad moves around this morning, with borrowing much higher than expected and retail sales also down. So let's cross over to the city and talk to our business presenter Ian King. So Ian, this is so important, isn't it, at the moment? We're talking about a new leader of the Tory party, a new Prime Minister, and the context for all of this is a struggling economy. So what are the latest details then?
Yeah, I mean, the borrowing figures that have been published in the last hour or so really underline the scope of the challenge facing the new Prime Minister and, of course, Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor. The UK borrowed in September £20 billion. That was up £2.2 billion on the same month last year. It's the second worst borrowing figure on record, topped only by September 2020, and really significantly worse than the Office for Budget Responsibility's forecast of £14.8 billion, which was published earlier this year. So government borrowing really blowing out. The national debt now stands at £2.45 trillion. Now, what was behind that big expansion in borrowing was a large increase in the amount of interest that the government is paying on the national debt. Interest payments in September alone were some £7.7 billion. Now, the economy is still expanding very, very slightly, and that reflects the higher tax take. The government took in more than £50 billion in taxes during the month, but it's the spending side that's really damaging as well, not just those interest payments. The total government spending during the month came in at £89 billion. That really underlines the scope of the challenge facing the new Chancellor. He's got to get, or the existing Chancellor for that matter, that if he's got to get tax take higher, he's got to somehow rein in public spending, and that's what the fiscal event on the 31st of October is all about. It's going to see tax increases and, in all likelihood, public spending cuts as well. Now, you mentioned the Chancellor's comments on this. There is a statement that we've got from Jeremy Hunt today. I can read you that. He says that the government will do whatever is